go.
Eight tenths. The comments to Levana, the Ketoris, the Mincha of Kohanim, the Mincha of the anointed Kohen, the libation Mincha are subject to Meila from when they are consecrated. Once they are consecrated in the sacred service vessel, they become prepared to be qualified through contact with the Tel Yom, through contact with the Mechus and Chipporim, or through remaining past their time. One is liable on their account for Nosa or for Tameh, but Pickle does not apply to them. This is the general rule. Any sacrificial animal that is permitted, one is not liable to on its accounts for Pickle, Nosa, or Tameh until its permitteds have been offered. Any sacrificial item that does not have permitteds, as soon as it is consecrated in a sacred vessel, one is liable on account for its Nosa, for Tameh, for Pickle, and for Pickle does not apply to it. The offspring of a katos, the tamura of a katos, and the katos whose owners have died or left to die. Regarding a katos whose year has passed and one that was lost and then found blemished, if after the owners have atoned for their sin, it is left to die, and it does not make a tamura. And it is forbidden for benefit, but is not subject to Meila. But if before the owners have atoned for their sin, it is left to graze until it develops a blemish, and is then sold, and the owner purchases another katos with the proceeds, and the original katos makes the tamura and is subject to Meila. Regarding one who sets aside money for his naziris, the money is not permitted for benefits, but is not subject to Meila, since all the money is fit to be brought as a shlamim. If the Nazir died and the money wasn't specified, it falls into the fund for voluntary offerings. If the money was specified, the money designated for the katos should go to the Dead Sea, and that money is not permitted for benefit, but it is not subject to Meila. With the money designated for the Ola, they should bring an Ola. And with the money designated for the shlamim, they should bring a shlamim. And for the shlamim may be eaten in one day and does not require the accompanying bread.
Okay. Gimel, Rabbi Shmuel. So he brings a contrast between blood of a korban, which is lenient at the beginning and severe at the end, and stringent at the end, and libations are lenient at the beginning but stringent at the end. Okay, why? Hadam betchila ein mo'alin bo. There's no din of meila by blood. By the blood itself, because that's learned out just from a Gezeres HaKasav, okay? Because it says va'ani nesativ lachem al mizbech lechaper nafsho seichem. So the drasha that they make from that is lechaper. It's there for kapara and not for meila. Okay, that's just a masorah that we have that there's no din of meila on blood. However, that's initially when the animal is shechted and when they throw the blood on the mizbeach. But yatzel nachal kidron, it flows out into the channel, and the channel goes out into nachal kidron, and Chazal made a gezerah on the stream that came out because it was good as fertilizer. The gardeners used to want to come and collect the all of the stuff that comes out, and lots of good protein inside there. Okay, and they said this is it's not respectful. If you want to use it, it's fine, but you have to pay for it. And in order to make sure that the gardeners didn't like just wait downstream and take it, they made a din of meila. They said if you use this the water of the Nachal Kidron coming out of the mikdash without paying for it, you're chayav for meila. So that way, if you've got a gardener who's Yarei Shamayim, he's gonna want to pay for it. Okay, so that's purely a din d'Rabbanan over there. Now, but wine, in wine libations that as soon as it's been designated as nesachim, there's immediately a din of meila on it. But once the mitzvah has been done, all that happens with the wine libations is it gets poured into that little cup on top of the mizbeach, if you recall. Okay, so it gets poured in there, and then it also drains out. Once it's drained out, the mitzvah's been done, and there's no more din of meila on it. Okay. So you see there that's the contrast that Rabbi Yishmael brings out, that's meila at the beginning but not at the end, as opposed to the dam, which has meila at the end, not at the beginning. Okay, Mishna Dalet, Dishun Mizbeach HaPnimi v'HaMenorah. So the ashes, when they come in, they have to come and regularly clear out the ashes of the inner altar, that's the incense altar, and the menorah. Okay. Lo nenin, lo molin. You're not allowed to get any benefit from it, just from a matter of kavod to the mikdash, but there's no din of meila because the mitzvah's already been done. So there's no. So even if somebody did misuse it, there is no din of meila. Hamatish dishon batchila molin bo. However, the dishon of the however, if one took the ashes and reconsecrated them. In other words, we've seen that before, that you're able to do that by saying, okay, this is basically a donation to Bedek Habayis. When you remakdish, if it's not something that's your stam hekdesh is for Bedek Habayis. So if that's the case, then it does have a din of Meila on it, because it's now been dedicated back again to the mikdash. Torim shelo higiyaz mana. Now, what happens if you have the pigeon? It's turtle doves. Turtle doves have to be above a certain age, and if they're too young, then they're not yet qualified to be a korban. Okay, uvnei yona she'avar zmanan, and young doves, which are supposed to be below that age. Lo nenim v'lo molin. If they have been, if somebody dedicated them to the mikdash, then you're not allowed to use them because they have been dedicated, but there's no din of meila on them. So why is there? Okay, because let's see if there's any comment over here. Okay. So Rabbi Shimon comes and says, Torin shelo higiyaz manan molin b'hen. He says, no, if somebody dedicated young turtle doves, that's it's before their time, you just have to wait, and then they'll come to a time where they're kosher, and therefore there's still a din of meila by them. However, he agrees that with the young doves that have gone over their age, there's no.
I'm sorry. You're saying you can consecrate the turtle doves even though the time hasn't arrived, and once the time arrived, then the time
arrives, then you're allowed to donate them. So therefore, Rabbi Shimon says that the din of meila kicks in immediately,
even though they're too young.
Even though they're too young, because eventually they're going to reach the age. And we saw Rabbi Shimon say something similar to this in an earlier Mishnah. Where did we see this? Was it in Tamura? I think it might have been in Tamura that we saw this opinion of Rabbi Shimon, that you just have to wait until it reaches the certain age, so because it's going to reach a certain age, because it will eventually reach the right age, it still counts for meila.
What happens if that turtle dove dies before it reaches that age?
Okay, then it died.
That's it.
Okay. But he agrees with Chachamim that once the time has passed, then there's no din of meila, although it's still asur to get benefit from them. Okay, Mishna Hey.
They're not subject to meila, but they're not permitted for benefit. The young pigeons, right? They have no benefit from them. Okay.
Correct. Okay. All right. So this is chalev hamukdashim. This is as in milk, not as in chalev. You've got to know how to punctuate these words. Okay. So if an animal was dedicated to the temple and it got milk, so what do you do with the milk? Or if you dedicated a bird and it laid an egg, lo nenim v'lo molin. There's no you're not allowed to derive benefit from it, but there's also no din of meila on it. But when is this so? That's when you're talking about something that was dedicated to the mizbeach, because only the parts that go on the mizbeach have got a din of meila. So from a cow, there's the milk. It doesn't go on the mizbeach unless it's inside the udder. You shecht it and it go okay. Then it goes on the mizbeach as part of the rest of the animal. But once it's separated, milk doesn't go on the mizbeach. So therefore, there's no din of meila on it. However, that's only when we're talking about things that are going to the mizbeach. Aval, the koche bedek habayis. If somebody dedicated something just for bedek habayis, Hikdish tarnagolis. So if he was makdish a chicken, okay. Mo'alin ba uva beitzasa. Then if it lays eggs, then the eggs also belong to the mikdash. And if anyone misuses the eggs, then they're also chayav for Meila. Okay. Chamor mo'alin ba uva chalava. And even a donkey, right? Even if you take something that's not even a kosher species, okay. But if somebody dedicated a donkey to the mikdash and it got milk and he wanted to sell the milk to a goy, that's a Meila. Okay, so that's where we'll end the new Mishnahs for the day. Back to Chrysos.
Aleph.
Yeah.
Of Aleph. If one brings an Asham Talu and then discovers that he has not sinned, and if he has not yet been slaughtered, it may go forth and graze with the flock. These are the words of the mayor. The Chachamim, however, say that it must graze until it develops a blemish, and then it is sold, and the proceeds deposited for the Noah and Rebbe Eliezer says it is sacrifice. For if it is not brought for the sin, it may be brought for another sin. If after it is slaughtered, it becomes known to him, the blood must be spilled and the meat must be removed to the place of burning. If the blood had already been thrown, the meat may be eaten. Rabbi Yossi says, even if the blood is still in a vessel, it may be thrown and the meat may be eaten. And Nashim Vadai is unlike this. If it had not yet been slaughtered, it may go forth and graze with the flock. If it had already been slaughtered, it must be buried. If the blood had been thrown, the meat must be removed to the place of burning. An ox which is to be stoned is unlike this. If it has not yet been stoned, it may go forth and graze with the herd. If it had already been stoned, it is permissible to derive benefit from it. A calf that is to be decapitated is unlike this. If it has not been even decapitated, it may go forth and graze with the herd. After the calf has been decapitated, it must be buried at its site, for it originally came to atone for a doubtful situation. Once it has atoned for its doubt, its purpose has been fulfilled. With Eliezer says a person may donate an asham to any day or any time that he wishes, and this is called the asham of the pious. And it was said concerning Baba ben Buti that he would donate an asham every asham tula every day, except one day after Yom Kippur. And he said, by the temple, were they to permit me, I would bring it. But if they tell me, wait until you come into a doubt, and come and say, we are not bringing asham and except for something which, if intentional, bears a penalty in Paris, and if unintentional, is really liable to a katos.
Okay. Arachin. Vav hey.
Whether one consecrates his property or one vows to own Eric. Once he has nothing of his wife's clothing or of his children's clothing or of the dyed garments that he dyed for them or of the new shoes that he bought for them. Although they said slaves are sold with their garments and to enhance their value, for clothing is purchased for him for 30 dinners, its value increases in mana, and so it is with a cow. If they hold it until the market day, its value increases, and so it is with a pearl. If they bring it up to the large city, its value increases, and the temple treasury has only its place and its time. One does not concentrate ancestral land unless 2 years before the Yovel, nor does one dream it less than a year after the Yovel. We do not reckon months in respect to the temple treasury, but the temple treasury has reckoned months. If one consecrates its field at the time of Yovel, he gives for an area of which is a koma of barley, He gives for an area in which a koma of barley would maybe be sown 50 silver shekels. If there were clefts 10 tefachim deep or rocks 10 tefachim high, they are not measured with it, and if they are less than that, they are measured with it. If he consecrated in 2 or 3 years before the Yovel, he gives a seller and quintillion each year. If he said, I will give the amount for each year, in that year we will pay him no heed, but he must give it all at once. This applies to both the owner and any other person. What is the difference between the owner and any other person? Only that the owner gives an additional fifth, whereas the other person does not give a fifth.
Okay. Yud Daled Yud.
These are the offerings that must be offered at the tabernacle offerings, which were consecrated for the tabernacle. Communal sacrifices must be offered at the tabernacle, when individual offerings may be offered at a minor bama. And individual offerings which are consecrated for the tabernacle must be offered at the tabernacle, but if he offered them at the minor bama, he is not liable. What are the differences between a private bama and a communal bama? leaning, slaughter in the north, application of the blood all around, and the altar, the tenufa, and bringing near. Rabbi Yehuda says milk offerings are not brought out of mama, and kahuna, sacred vestments, sacred vessels, pleasing aroma or separation regarding blood, and washing the hands and feet, but the consecration due to his time and tent, nosa and tame are the same for both. Okay.
And Menachos.
Oh, I was going right on to okay. Wait, I think I skipped something, sure. We didn't do, did I skip it? I think I went ahead. We didn't do it in, let me just see something in a mess over here. We didn't do Bava Kama, right?
We haven't got there. No, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there after this.
Oh,
First we do Menachos.
And that, what were we doing? The Bava Kama.
First Menachos, then Bava Kama, then Psachim. You got Menachos there.
I'm sorry?
Menachos now.
Okay. Aleph. All mikvah offerings whose kamitza was performed before the sake of a designation other than their own are valid, but they are not credited to the owner as fulfillment of his obligation, except for the sinners mincha offerings and the jealousy mincha offerings. If one performed the kamitza of the owner, the sinners mincha offering or the jealousy mincha offering for the sake of the designation other than their own, where he placed them in a vessel other than their own, except for the sinners mincha offering and the jealousy mincha offering. If one performed the kamitza of the sinners mincha offering or the jealousy mincha offering for the sake of a designation of their own, or he placed them in a vessel or carried them or burnt them on the altar for a designation other than their own, or for their own designation and a designation other than their own, or for a designation other than their own as well as their own designation, they are invalid. What is an example for their own designation and a designation other than their own? For the sake of a sinner's mincha offering or for the sake of a voluntary mincha offering, what is an example for a designation other than their own as well as their own designation? For the sake of a voluntary mincha offering as well as for the sake of a sinner's mincha offering. The sinner's mincha offering as well as any other mincha offering whose chamitza was performed by a non-kohen or a onin or a tevel yom, or one who lacks vestments, or one who lacks atonement, or one whose hands and feet have not been washed, or one who is uncircumcised, one who is tameh, who is sitting or standing upon utensils, or for an animal, or for a colleague's feet, is invalid. If one performed kamitza with the left hand, he has invalidated it. Ben Becerra says he should replace it and perform kamitza again with the right hand. If he performed kamitza and a pebble came onto his hand, or a grain of salt, or a particle of frankincense, he has invalidated it because they said the comments which is excessive or deficient is invalid. Which is excessive? One in which he removed the heap comments, which is deficient. One in which he performed kamitza with his fingertips. How does he do it? He extends his fingers over the palm of his hand, over his hand. Okay.
Right, now Bava Kama.
Okay, if one robs another or borrows from him or deposits something with him in a settled region, he may not return it to him in the wilderness. Or condition that he was going out to the wilderness, he may return it to him in the wilderness. If one says to another, I robbed you, you lent me, or you deposited with me, or he did not know what I returned, whether I returned it to you or whether I did not return it to you, he is obligated to pay. But if he says to him, I do not know whether I robbed you, whether you lent me or whether you deposited with me, he is exempt from paying. If one steals a lamb from the flock and returns it and it dies or is stolen, he is responsible for it. If the owners were aware neither of its theft nor of its return, and they counted the flock and it was complete, he is exempt. We may not purchase wood, milk, or kids from shepherds, nor wood or fruit from watchmen or fruit, but we may purchase from women woolen garments and.
Hold on, no, you're already into the next Mishnah. That's what tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to finish Bava Kama and start Bava Metzia.
Right.
Right. Psachim.
I think when you start this Mishnah, you have to, no, this isn't the one. Okay. Okay. If one sacrifices became mixed with katas offerings that must be left to die, or with wax that must be stoned, even if he only,
Whoa, just a second. Where are you reading?
Welcome, right?
No, Psachim. Okay.
Does this mean we have to clean the house? Or this is okay? But Meila says we may eat chametz the entire 5th hour, but we must burn it at on the onset of the 6th hour. Rabbi Yehuda says we may eat chametz the entire 4th hour, but we may suspend the entire 5th hour and must burn it at the onset of the 6th hour. Rabbi Yehuda says also says we 2 loaves of a Thanksgiving offering which have been become unfit were placed on the roof of a portico. As long as they lay up there, all the people would eat chametz. When one was removed, they suspended. They would neither eat nor burn for the chametz. When both were removed, all the people would begin to burn their chametz. Rabbi Gamliel says non-consecrated chametz may be eaten the entire 4th hour. Truma, which is chametz, may be eaten the entire 5th hour, and we must burn all chametz at the onset of the 6th hour. Chanina, the administrator of the Kohanim, says that all the days of the Kohanim, they refrained from burning sacrificial meat that had been contaminated by a secondary tumah together with sacrificial meat that had been contaminated by a primary tumah. Although by doing so they added contamination to its contamination. Rabbi Akiva added, saying that in all the days of the Kohanim, never did they refrain from lighting oil that became unfit through contact with the Tevel Yom in a lamp that had been contaminated contaminated by a corpse. Although by doing so they added contamination to its contamination.
Okay.
Okay.
And Nida.
What happened with Zvakim?
We finished it today.
The whole thing.
You can put it away for now.
I put them in the wrong order when I'm putting them away here. That's what I do every day. I put them in the order for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Every subject that contracts treading tumah contracts corpse tumah, but there can be an object that contracts corpse tumah, but does not contract reading tumah, treading tumah. Everyone who's eligible to judge capital cases is eligible to judge monetary cases, but there can be someone who's eligible to judge monetary cases, but is not eligible to judge capital cases. Everyone who is fit to judge is fit to testify, but there can be someone who is fit to testify, but is not fit to judge. Every food that is subject to tithes contracts food tumah, but there can be a food that contracts food tumah and is not subject to tithes. Every growth that is subject to payah is subject
to
tithes.
We've already done 3 Mishnahs there, so that's us for the day.
I'm sorry, I was going ahead. Okay.
They were short Mishnahs, so.
Some of the judge and